This week's Parsha, Parshat Shmini, devotes a tremendous amount of space to explaining the laws of kosher food, specifically the laws pertaining to kosher animals. And it anchors this discussion in the concepts of Tumah and Tara, the concepts of impurity and purity. This kind of anchoring makes sense given what Moshe says to Aaron before these laws are listed. He says, he gives him an injunction, Lahavdil ben hakodesh uven hachol, uven hatameh uven hatahor, to distinguish between the sacred and the profane, and between the impure and the pure. But what's strange about this is that while the Torah presents clear guidelines for distinguishing between the pure and the impure, describing the characteristics of kosher animals, and then listing a whole smorgasbord of other animals that might have one but not the other, it doesn't really give much direction with regard to distinguishing between holiness and profanity. All it says is listed in the narrative of injunction and obligation. It says, "V'yiskadishtem v'yisem kedoshim ki kadosh ani." You are to sanctify yourselves, and you shall become holy, for I am holy. But this is really just a demand. It's an imperative without any guidelines. It almost assumes that we, or at least Aaron and his sons, already know what holiness is. But what is it? What does it actually mean to be holy or to sanctify ourselves? The answer, in fact, lies earlier on in the Parsha, when the Torah describes in similar detail the procedures for sacrificing animals to God, which is, of course, the very ritual of holiness. The entirety of the ritual procedure involves not only Aaron, but his sons as well. And the Torah describes it as Vayishchad es ha'ola, vayamtziu b'nei Aaron elav es hadam vayzarkeu al mizbeach saviv. Aaron slaughtered the ola sacrifice, and his sons presented the blood to him, and he threw it upon the mizbeach. It's clear that the holy ritual here of sacrifice is meant to be performed with others, but it also makes it clear that it's for others as well. As the Parsha continues, it says, Vayakrev es korban ha'am, vayikach es seir achatas asher la'am. He sacrificed the offering of the people, and he took the sin offering goat that was for the people. So holiness is therefore not purely an individual responsibility, but a collective one devoted to communal elevation. In fact, that is what holiness is all about, infusing one's actions with communal wherewithal. In his new book on sacrifice, Jewish political philosopher Moshe Halbertal describes sacrifice in these very terms as an act of what he calls self-transcendence, moving beyond our punish motives and desires, being willing to contribute heartily to the public good. Halbertal describes this self-transcendence as a necessary feature of elevated living infused with holy work. He says, self-transcendence is at the core of the human capacity for a moral life. It is that very self-transcendence that two of our own sons, Nadav and Avihu, lack when God cuts them down for being obsessed with their own sacrifices. As the pasuk states, "Vayichu v'nei Aaron Nadav v'Avihu ish machtaso." Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took his own fire pan. "Vayakrivu lifnei Adonai eish zara asher lo tziva osam." And they brought before Hashem a foreign fire that he had not commanded them. Though Aaron brings his own sacrifice at the beginning of the Parsha, it's clear from the context that this is something of a preparation for fulfilling his communal responsibilities. Nadav and Avihu, on the other hand, each brought their own pans for their own sacrifices, divorced from the community and divorced from the procedures of contributing to it. We don't know whether they were concerned with purity, but they certainly weren't concerned with holiness. They failed to see anything outside of their own internal worship, and it was their limited and unelevated actions that ultimately consumed them. This is actually an important lesson for all of us, to be as consumed by our responsibility to be holy as by our responsibility to be pure, to serve our different communities, professional and religious and social, to care not only about the purity of the food we eat, but of the people within our community who produce it. We should all take heed from the Parsha to support such ventures like Tav HaYosher, the ethical seal, which help us to fulfill our obligation to be at once pure and holy.